What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 632. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line, fresh off of some absurd-looking tacos, Luis. I'm still kind of mad at you for sending those pictures. It's Luis Scott-Vargas. What was the deal with that, man? You made birria tacos?
Yeah, it was something that I always wanted to do, and I never had. So I ended up finding a good recipe that uses a pressure cooker, the Instant Pot, which is actually like a pretty solid kitchen gadget, one that I've grown a large appreciation for, and it came out excellent. I had my brother over, and it was just really good.
Good God, it looks so good too. And you did it right, man. You had all the peppers in there. You got the meat all cut up. It looked so good. Yeah. Very, very jealous. This week on the show, we got a fun one for you. We're kind of in the in-between times, right? There's, Vow's been out forever. They just took away our cube from Magic Online. It's kind of slim pickings for limited content, but that's not going to stop us from bringing you life-changing information here today. We're going to talk about magic heuristics for real life. That's right. Some of the ways that you can take the things that you may have learned about magic on the show and apply them to your real life to be happier, more successful, whatever it is that you're looking for. So it should be a really fun show. Before we get to it though, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for all of your magic needs. They've got everything over at CFB. I talked about the marketplace before, but there's also CFB Pro. If you're looking to get the inside information for your next tournament, CFB Pro is a great place to go. Basically, professional players will write up their thoughts on different formats, different archetypes, different decks, stuff like that, so that you can take that information and use it for yourself. This is a great way to get up to speed on a format if you're a little behind on it, or if you've got a tournament coming up and it's not one that you normally play. You can find a deck there. They'll go through all the iterations, matchups, sideboard guide, all that type of stuff, and boom, you're all caught up and ready to go for your tournament. So CFP Pro is just one of the many cool things over at Channel Fireball. If you do pick up something over there, make sure you use the affiliate code LR at checkout. It lets them know that we sent you, and I appreciate you doing it. There's also another sponsor for the show, FTX, FTX.com outside the US and FTX.us inside. This is a safe, regulated place to manage your digital assets. So things like cryptocurrencies, NFTs, that type of stuff. You can go over to FTX. They have an app for your phone, or you can go on the website and you can buy, sell, trade all of your digital assets. This seems to be the way that the world's going. There's a lot of potential in this technology, and we're still in the early stages. But if you want to learn more about it and maybe even dip your toe in the pool, FTX is a great first step for you. So when you feel like you're ready, head on over to FTX for that. I want to remind you that this is an investment type. And so if you are going to invest, you should always consult an investment professional, because neither Luis nor I are one. And of course, there is risk, and you need to understand exactly what you're getting into before you do it. So there you go. And then, of course, the patreon.com/limited resources, really the lifeblood of the show. Thanks so much to everybody over there for supporting us. You do get to put questions in for the Patreon question of the week. This one comes from another Marshall. Marshall Chaney says, I like the conversation Marshall and Ryan had about finding people who you can trust to give you honest feedback. Could you give us some advice on how to be somebody that others can trust and how to give feedback that people can use in that way? That's a really nice question for Marshall here, because Marshall's flipped it, right? It's how can I be good for somebody else rather than how can I find somebody who would be good for me? And I really kind of appreciate that flip there. Luis, what would you say about you've probably had more people than really anybody probably ever ask for magic advice from you. When it comes to being let's say on a testing team or a friend of yours, how do you find it the most useful for you to deliver that information to them?
So it really depends on your audience. So knowing your audience is a good first step, because how I would talk to, Cheon is different than how I talk to someone I don't know, often much less respectfully. But
the former, yeah.
But knowing who you're talking to can help tailor your advice very well. Because look, we've all been there, right? There's some people who when you talk to them, you have to be pretty reassuring or careful, because this is something that they're touchy about, or something it's hard for them to take advice from you. Or some people, they really want you to be just straight up very blunt.
Yeah.
And you got to know your audience, because what works for one will tend not to work for the other. You know, you soft pedal too much with someone, especially someone who's like maybe not good at picking up nuance. They're going to keep doing the thing they shouldn't be doing because they didn't hear, hey, what you're doing is bad, cut it out. They heard you say kind of like mealy mouthed, like, oh yeah, blah, 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 you know?
Right.
And likewise, the person who can be, tricky to like, who can be touchy or maybe just, they don't take criticism well. And you know, that's something that a lot of people we know just have. That's just a character trait you can have. You code too hard on them and they just shut down. They're not going to listen, or they're going to intentionally do the opposite or something like that. So a big one is knowing your audience. And I think a big part of the reason I've been in a position like that is I tend to know the people who I'm talking to well enough that I can give the right kinds of advice when they're ready to receive it at the right time. Yeah.
You know, I think to dovetail off that, I would say, you know, the first time that you have these conversations with somebody, I would be very straightforward. And I would say, well, you're asking me for advice. So you think that I have something valuable to say. Do you want to hear what I really have to say? Or do you want me to make you feel good about the fact that you made a mistake or that something unlucky happened to you? You know, and I kind of make them say like, no, I'm ready. I want to hear it. You know, you can let me know what I'm really doing. And cause you can say, I have no interest in hurting your feelings or, you know, whatever. But if you make a mistake, I feel like you're asking me, I want to be able to tell you straightforwardly that I think that this was a mistake. And then I think, you know, once you've kind of set those ground rules, cause I mean, we all know that, yeah, like Luis said, it is really not productive to give somebody harsh advice who's not ready to take it. But the best way to move forward and to get information across quickly and efficiently is by being able to be very blunt, right? Like that is the best, you know, if you were to set up the best, you know, teacher student relationship or something, it would be where the student was open to the information and was willing to accept it in whatever way it came, and where the teacher could be very straightforward and honest about what they saw without having to worry that they were going to lose the student or hurt their feelings or whatever. So, you know, that is kind of the goal. But like you said, everybody's different. I mean, I know for me, if somebody said, I'm really sensitive, I really don't do well with criticism, I don't like it when people tell me I do something wrong, I would just say, this is not a good fit. Like, I'm not going to be mean to you, but like, I got to feel like I can say what I need to say, you know, straight up. Right. Cause otherwise it's just too cumbersome to have to be like, well, I can see why you made the play and I applaud you for your bravery, but it might have been it's like, oh my God, like just get to the point, right? Like this was a mistake. Here's why. Let's work on how to fix it. You know, that's kind of where you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth dancing around if it's like a really good friend of yours who you've known for 15 years, but a random person walking up to you asking for advice. Obviously you're not going to want to do that. It reminds me of, when someone's like, hey, can you, I kind of don't, I haven't had good experiences of looking at people's constructed decks, because mostly if I'm at like a GP and they're like, hey, can you take a look at my constructed deck? Do you have any suggestions? They generally want me to just validate them and tell them that their deck is good.
Right.
That's usually what they're asking for.
Right.
And that's not something I'm super interested in doing. Whereas, you know, when it's like, hey, can you help me build the sealed pools, are very much like they really want to hear what you have to say. Mm-hmm. So it's really just good to know what the situations are and who you're talking to, and kind of like, you know, just dial in your kind of responses that way. I mean, it's the same reason that a lot of people who, when they communicate, like when you're trying to teach something, how you message something does matter. Obviously you do need to get your message across, but like you catch more, you know, flies with honey than vinegar is true. And totally. It's always a balance. You know, sometimes you err too far on the side of being too nice. Sometimes you err too far on the side of being too blunt. And it's not straight up a continuum, but there is, you know, a lot in that range where you can end up.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because what I was describing before would be like, if I was going to look to kind of partner up with somebody to help each other get better at Magic or whatever, I'd want to know, hey, I can tell you what I really think, right? But if somebody on Twitter says, hey, did I make the right play? And I don't think they did, I'm not going to just be like, you're awful, that was bad. You know, I'll be nice about it, but I'll, you know, still tell them what I actually think. One thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the main topic, Luis, was the charity event that we did. Ended up being really fun.
Oh, really? You want to talk about it, huh?
Don't you?
I'm just bitter that I screwed up against you and you beat me.
Yeah, that was.
I
great.
had to win in there somewhere.
I know you did. There had to be. I mean, I tried to give it to you. Like, you factor fiction, and I thought about the piles, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just let them have all five.
It was too late at that point. It was the storm turn. Anyways, let's talk about what it was and what happened.
Yeah. So go ahead, tell them.
So this was a charity draft run by or sponsored by FTX, who's our sponsor of the show. And how it worked is we got me, Marshall, Kenji, and BK, all the resources to do a vintage cube draft with a bunch of the FTX folks. And it was really sweet because they were putting up $10K for the person who went 3-0, $5K if you went 2-1, and $2,500 if you went 1-2 or 0-3 to the charity of your choice, plus an additional $500 if you got some of the cube achievements from a list that BK originally came up with. And I couldn't help myself. I just really couldn't, even for charity. I drafted Storm.
It's so awesome that you drafted Storm. It's so sweet.
I ended up beating SBF, the one of the founders of FTX, the owner. In round one with a bunch of time walks in a row, but I did not succeed otherwise. And I found myself at 1-1 playing against Marshall, and you turned 3 on the play terrased on me game 1.
and then the next turn I played another one.
Oh yeah, and then game 2 I was able to get an Oath of Druids plus Yawgmoth Will going, but like I said, I actually messed up and just kind of fumbled at the end and ended up not getting there.
Yeah, but it was funny because one of the things you mentioned briefly there was you took all those turns against SPF, but that was a achievement, right?
Yes, I got an extra 500 for Planned Parenthood. That was the charity I was battling for. So it ended up being 3K from me for that.
Yeah, and it was really cool because those were really fun. The achievement things, because some of them were just like, do you have this card in your deck or not? But some of them, like I achieved one where I was like, we went through the list after the first match, and I was like, wait, didn't we do that? And I went back and looked, and one of the achievements was you have to get a +1/+1 counter from Avenger of Zendikar onto a non-token plant. And I used Sylvan Caryatid to ramp it out. And I'm like, wait, isn't that a plant? And my chat was like, I think Caryatid's a plant. And we looked it up and we clipped it. And I did. I got a +1/+1 counter on him. And so I got an extra 500 for Seattle Children's Hospital. So that was great. And then really generous too, when you and I faced off in the final round, NLW, Nathaniel, he's one of our main points of contact over at FTX. And he was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw in an extra 500 of his own money, by the way. This was him putting this up. This wasn't FTX to whichever resource wins. And so I got an extra 500 to Seattle Children's from him as well, which I thought was really a stand-up thing to do from Nathaniel. So thanks for that. That was really cool. And my deck ended up being, by the way,
blue-green ramp.
Yeah, almost mono green, but yeah, I tried to do some fun stuff, and then it was just like stupid. Me. Yes, I did. That's right. I forgot.
Almost mono green. All right.
Okay, fine. Not quite mono green. Blue green ramp, but yeah, the deck was actually fairly boring. I try to do some more fun stuff. I try to be like blue red and wheel some stuff, and nothing did. But then green ended up just being really open. So I was like, whatever. And I went into that. I like that archetype anyway, so that was totally fine. And I won round 1, and then round 2 I faced against mono red, and I had one of those really bizarre matches, just super crazy. My opponent mulliganed to 5 in the first game, and we barely squeaked out a win. Or actually, I think we lost that game. I can't remember. And then, but we ended up being 1-1 and going to game number 3. And my opponent was Adam, who again mulliganed to 5. And I had one of those great ramp starts where like your whole hand's on the table by turn 3 or turn 4. It's all like you have like 9 or 10 mana available. But I ran out of gas. But my deck was pretty well suited to not completely, be on empty because I had card draw from blue and stuff like that. But I started flooding and I couldn't get anything. And Adam didn't play like any relevant card until like turn 4 or turn 5 in mono red. But then he lightning bolted one of my creatures and then used the, I call it the red Snapcaster Mage, whatever it's called. The
Direfleet Daredevil?
No. The other red Snapcaster.
Oh, Bloodthirsty Adversary?
Yeah, Bloodthirsty Adversary.
Sure, yeah.
To flash it back and kill another or something like that. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I just need to draw something big. But then he played Thundermaw Hellkite and started smashing my face with it. And I'm like, oh my God, like I was on cruise control, just thinking I'll find something. And now I'm like almost dead. And then there was a critical last attack. And it was really interesting because I knew the top card of my library. And it was a 1/1. It was Hex Drinker. And I had Ignoble Hierarch on the battlefield as well as the Copter. And he was at 4. And if I can block he attacks with all of his creatures, everything in. And he has 1 card left. And I'm like, okay, if I can block to keep the Ignoble Hierarch alive, draw the Hex Drinker, play it, and, get in the Copter, then I can hit for exactly 4. And I can win the game. But that Copter is sitting there and that Ignoble Hierarch is sitting there. So Adam knows this and is jamming anyway. And he has showed me Fire Blast in a prior game. And I'm like, it's got to be Fire Blast. But then kind of went through the iterations and decided that I wasn't going to beat it anyway. Cause he could just Fire Blast the Copter and then just kill me anyway. So I decided not to play around Fire Blast and left myself the option to win. And then boom, 2 mountains go in the pin. He Fire Blasted me. And that was it. So even though it was way closer, it's kind of a tale as old as time. Mono red beats green ramp. And then that set up you and I in the final, but ended up making $6,000 for Seattle Children's Hospital. And we just wanted to say thanks again to FTX for putting on the event and putting up the money for it and all that stuff. Felt really good to support charities and do stuff like that. Okay, let's get into the main topic, Luis. Commonly used heuristics for Magic that we've talked about on the show, countless times, and how they translate to real life. The first and I think the most important, I want to start with like a really big heavy hitter. We've got a couple of really important ones later too, but if I were to pick one to kind of give our overarching philosophy, it would be don't be results oriented, right? And this is like, this goes to many aspects of sort of existing as a human being, right? Like one thing that you have to understand about how we are made up mentally, psychologically, or whatever, is that we have a tendency to shy away from things that don't work well for us or that hurt us. And that's a fundamentally good thing to have, right? And I think that if you do sort of just a really basic case study on like take any animal, right? That, like a dog or, a cat or something like that, right? You take a cat, and if I put a cat out on the balcony, right, of my apartment building, the cat would not jump over the edge. And you ask, well, why not? Right? Like the cat was just born. It had a brain. It figured out how to walk. It has muscles and stuff. How does it know not to just jump over the edge, right? Like it jumps off of the countertop and onto the ground and it knows, hey, I'm not going to die. But if it jumps off of a tall building, it would. How does it know that without being taught? No, there's no training regimen on a cat, right? That its mom doesn't walk it over to things and say, don't jump off of this and do jump, and it makes you think, well, how does it know? And, the answer is that, these type of instincts and things are carried over in DNA, genetic material, that type of stuff. And if you apply that to human being eats something, gets sick, doesn't want to eat it again. Very basic way to survive, right? It's to say, if something doesn't work, then I'm going to remember that basically. And then sometimes even encode that into my genetic material, pass that on to my relatives, and then they're not going to do it either. So thumbs up. Good job, human beings. That's a good place to start. But in a complex world like what we live in, now that fails. It doesn't fail universally. It's still a good rule of thumb, but we as humans are still very susceptible to overstating that, to having a bigger impact on our brain where a thing didn't work and then assigning negativity to it and not wanting to do it again. And that's where, as capable, logical, practical people, we have to be able to look at situations and take that part of our brain out of it and actually, decide, yes, this was bad for me and I don't want to do it again, or no, this didn't work out this time, but I'm actually happy with how I did it. And of course, that's not being results oriented. Don't be Roddy. We've said this since the very, very early days of the show. And the whole point of that, of course, is to focus on making decisions based on the information that you have right now, and then coming up with the best course of action that you can from that, given your skill set, your knowledge level, all of those things, and then making that decision based on everything that you know to make the best possible move, if you will, that you can. And the hard part with that is that it can be very tempting to get discouraged. It can be really easy to say, I'm going to do that, and then have something not work out. And it hurts, right? It hurts your feelings. It hurts your psyche. It hurts your ego. It hurts it can really feel bad. And there's going to be something inside of you that's going to say, don't do that again. Give up. That hurt. I don't want to get hurt again. And that's the part where if you can look back and show your work and say, no, I did the things that I needed to do. It just for any number of different reasons, it didn't work out this time. You need to get back on the horse and do it again. A really good example of this would be you want a job. You want a new job, or you're out of school and you're looking for jobs. So you do all the things that you feel you can do to get ready for the job that you're going to apply to. You get your resume all spick and span. You network as best you can. You study up on the company that you're going to be going to. You get the requirements for the job and make sure you have all your paperwork in order. Everything's good to go. You show up, you do the interview, you're polite, you're professional, you're straightforward, you're honest, and you walk out of there and you go, nailed it, right? I did all the things I needed to do. And then a week later you get the call and they say, we're going to go a different direction. Sorry. And you didn't get the job. It can be really tempting to look at that and go, well, why did I do all of this? Like, why did I put all this effort in? Why did I put myself on the line? Why did I go through all the stress and the ups and downs of going to job interviews and talking to people I don't know and feeling put on the spot? And I didn't even get the job. This is stupid. Like, it doesn't even work. Why would I do this? Right. And there's a level of discouragement that can happen, again, when you feel hurt or embarrassed or, just some level of pain. But there's a pattern that arises, especially over time. Luis and I are middle-aged guys now. Like, we've been around long enough to see kind of how people's careers around us have gone, how people's lives around us have gone. And the pattern that you see is that people who have the ability to say, nope, I did everything I needed to do. It just didn't work out. Next, right? And I'm going to do all of it again. I'm going to do every bit that I just did on the next job interview and the next job interview and the next job interview. And then you apply that not just to job interviews, but to anything that you're trying to achieve in life. Is that, yes, on any short-term stretch, even people that you would consider very successful or very capable or very smart or very whatever can have downswings or things that don't go their way. I applied for 3 jobs in a row. I didn't get all 3 of them, and I felt like I was qualified. I felt like I did a great job, and I didn't get them. But when you zoom out a little bit and look at their life from a bigger picture perspective, even over the course of just a few years, they do not fail. People like that just never, like, effectively never fall off the map and just go, screw it. I'm just going to, go get some crappy job that I know I can get, but that I don't want to do. And that's just going to be my life, or that's just the road I'm going to take. That just doesn't happen. If you apply these principles over and over and over and over, you just start accumulating these, wins or whatever you want to call them. And they snowball, and really, it's not stoppable over time is my observation. What's your take on that, Luis? Have you seen that in your life too?
I think a big thing is it is one of our deepestly ingrained kind of instincts is I did a thing, a reaction happened, therefore the thing caused the reaction. Yeah. But the problem is our world is just a lot more complicated now. That may have served us pretty well when it's like, hey, I ate a handful of berries and now I'm vomiting. I shouldn't eat those berries again. The problem is now we're in a world where it's pretty easy to do a bunch of stuff, like you said, do everything right in a situation and have the result not be the one you want. It's really easy to pour your heart and soul into something and not get what you wanted out of it and conclude you didn't do things correctly. And I think that one of the things that you learn in Magic is you make the right plays and you lose, and that happens a lot. And at the end of the day, that doesn't mean you should stop making the right plays. Just if you keep making the right plays, more often than not, things will eventually go your way. They won't always. We're not here to tell you that everything's always going to work out. Sometimes it just doesn't. But we know a wide range of people with a wide range of success in a lot of different areas, right? The people who are good at just continually making the right play, even when, things don't always work out for them, are the people that tend to succeed and overall, I think, have found a lot of success for themselves.
Right. Another thing that you'll learn from Magic that I think you can apply very well to real life that's in this same vein is the idea of when you're teaching, let's say you have a pretty talented gamer, somebody who's like kind of picking up Magic and getting it, but they're still very new at the game. And a lot of times you'll say, well, you should make this play. And they're like, but that's not going to work. Like they probably have a counterspell, or if they just do this, then it's not going to work. Right. And that is a great teaching moment, because you say, I know, like it's going to work about, like my estimate is 8% of the time or 10% of the time or something. It's an extreme long shot. It's a rarity that this actually plays out. And so a lot of people would go, well, then why would I do that? Right. And it's like, because the alternative is 0, right? Or if it's 10% that it's going to work, the alternative is 5, right? And I'm going to take the gap. And that's a hard thing, because people tend to focus in on individual events. Like, am I going to get this job? And let's say you're in the situation that we described. You're a good candidate for the job, but it's a popular job. Like, this isn't some, I know a friend thing. This is like, I applied online and there's going to be other people doing this too. What's your percentage chance of getting that job if you're like a solid B+ candidate? Well, if there's 8 other people, if there's 10 other people, right? 10, 15% baseline. If you're better than them, let's say you're way better than them. You're twice as better. We're going to give you a 30% chance of getting this job against the field. Remember, there's 8, 10 other people, whatever, right? Even if you're the favorite among the group, you can still have a relatively low percentage. 30% is only 1 in 3 times roughly that you're actually going to walk away with that job. 2/3 of the time you're like, hey, I got to go find something else, even if you were, the one most likely to get it out of the group. And that really helps set expectations, because then when you walk in and you don't get it, you're like, well, yeah, this was a definite possibility. There's a lot of other people and a lot of other things. And you mentioned it, Luis, we've seen a lot of successful people around us. And also, we've both had the chance to be kind of on the other side of like corporate life or of a business, right? And I've interviewed people in my old job. I had to interview people that were going to be on my team. And I'm sure you've interviewed people for the companies that you've been a part of. And, it's not appropriate to talk to people about if they didn't get the job afterwards. In most cases, it's just unprofessional. But I mean, I know for sure that I've been on the other side of it and seen why somebody got a job. And it wasn't what you'd think. It wasn't about like their resume or whatever. It was like, oh, they found out that they had a very specific skill set that wasn't known, or that very few people have, that was really useful, even though the other person didn't have that. It wasn't brought up. They didn't know that that was something that was needed. It just came out in the interview. Oh, I used to do this in my other job. And they're like, wow, we actually could use somebody who could be a liaison with this other team who does that. So that's really great. We're going to hire you. And the other person doesn't get the job, but they don't know anything about that. Right. And like, when you're on the other side of it, you're just like, oh, it wasn't you. You were a good candidate. They wanted to hire you. It's just this other person happened to have this skill set that came in really handy and is kind of unique, right? And you could walk away with your head hung low thinking like I suck, or they don't like me, or I'm never going to get a job or whatever. And that just wasn't the case at all.
Yeah. And it's interesting that like persistence is valued for a reason. And part of that reason is persistence in some cases, lets you take more shots when you actually had a winning hand, even though you ended up losing. Mm-hmm. And how many people, like one of the things that would be kind of interesting to know, right, is how many people walked away from something when they were actually going to succeed in that thing if they gave it a few more shots.
Oh, it happens.
And look, that's not to say that you should never give up and, something's not working out, but, just keep going for it. It'll eventually happen. Sometimes there is a time to call it.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, I think that brings up the last point I want to make about the don't be Roddy is the hardest part of not being results oriented is self-honesty. It's setting reasonable expectations for what you can do, because you don't want to limit yourself. That's stupid. You don't want to just say like, well, I could never do that. It's like, well, do you want to? Are you capable? But the hard part is being honest. This comes up for me the most in content creator circles, right? Where somebody has an idea and they're like, I want to make a YouTube channel about this thing. And then they'll talk to me about it, but they don't really have any sense for what the ceiling would be for it, what the floor would be for it, and what success looks like. They just want to do the thing. you know, and then if it doesn't really work, they're getting, 1,000 views a video or something, and they were hoping to get 15 or 20, and it's just not happening. It's really tough to say, maybe there's not an audience for this. Like, you don't want to do that as your first instinct because it takes time to build it and all that stuff. But, there is a level where you go, this is about where this show's going to be, right? Like, there isn't a huge pool of people just clamoring to get at my niche magic show or my hobby that I like or whatever, right? And, it's worth it to take the shot to see, but you should always have an idea. Perfect example is when I made MTG Breakdown, right? I had those two types of videos I wanted to do. I wanted to do the vlogs when we were traveling, and I wanted to do the breakdown videos of the old matches. And, that hit a level for me where I was happy with it, right? But it wasn't wildly successful by any stretch. It wasn't some huge YouTube channel with, it wasn't like, the Professor or, any of these, big YouTubers. But when it hit what it hit, I said, that is what I expected. This is niche content even for Magic, right? And that I felt was like the appropriate way to approach it, was to look at it and be honest with myself about, I want to do this content because it's what I want to do. I'm not doing this to try to appeal to the widest possible audience. That would be a different type of content and I maybe could make it, but I wouldn't want to. So, it took that self-honesty for me though, to kind of set the expectations. And when the channel got to where it got, I was happy. I was like, hey, this is great. I'm getting, these videos are getting thousands of views. And like, I was like, this is kind of exactly what I expected it to be. But that can be really hard because sometimes it means this isn't the thing, right? And for me, like, that YouTube channel it was a side project that I wanted to learn how to edit. It had a bunch of stuff going for it, but that was never a thing that I saw a potential to be like a big pillar of my career or whatever. So I was at peace with that already. But a lot of times, people, hey, I'm going to make a new YouTube channel about my frog collection or whatever. And it's like, that's never going to hit huge mainstream numbers. And, if you know that going in, it can really help. What's the next heuristic we should hit on here, Luis, as far as
have a good mana curve? So what we want to talk about here is basically, like, think about the draft rule that we've used. Take the cheap card over the expensive card. It's better to have too many 2-drops than not enough. And what we mean is it's better to underspend than overspend. It's better for you to come in under the amount you should be spending or could comfortably spend than it is to come in over, because obviously things go a lot worse when you start racking up debt, when you start, not having money to maybe pay for the really important things that, because you spent money somewhere else. And basically the way I look at it is, if you can afford it, it's totally fine to buy things you want or, spend. And it's not just money, actually, because this is also just kind of time and money. I view they're not exactly interchangeable, but I think it's pretty close to being there in terms of like they are resources. Mm-hmm. And you have finite amounts of those resources. And the funny thing about how life works is you tend to have more of one and less of the other at any given time. Mm-hmm. It's true. And then as one goes up, the other tends to go down. But when deciding how to allocate your resources, it's better to be on the slightly conservative side. Again, I'm not saying like, never spend money or time on things that aren't directly helping you or aren't the necessities, but it's a hell of a lot better to be $500 under your budget than $500 over your budget. Yeah. And it's really easy to go the other direction because there's just a lot of things pushing you to spend more money or to spend time on things. And that's, obviously advertising is a big part of that, or what your friends are doing. Like, I think that it can be tricky, but sometimes if your friends want to do something and it just doesn't seem like a good use of your resources, like, it's okay to tell them like, hey, I can't afford to do this, or I don't want to do this, or whatever. This isn't, saying this isn't worth it to me is like maybe a little bit on the like blunt side, but that is basically what you're saying. Mm-hmm. When someone says like, oh, that place is a little too pricey for me, that doesn't usually mean I literally can't afford it. It's mostly like, I don't want to spend my resources doing that thing.
That's right. It makes me uncomfortable to spend that much or whatever. Yeah. The thing that really stands out and that I've learned over the years, especially when it comes to financially, and this is really, I'm sure this applies in many places, but boy, here in the States, it's just completely rampant and absurd, is to live within your means. But in order to determine what your means are, to not look around you, not look at your friends, not look at your social circle, not look at your, like, it's to actually look at your bank account and how much you need to spend to do the lifestyle that you have. Because at least here in the States, I've never lived anywhere else for any long period of time. I was in Germany for a few months, but nothing like this. We're spenders, big time, take on debt, spend. And that is a really tough way to get ahead financially. And what often happens is you are just ingrained in your social circles and in your society, your city, your town, your community, and things that are kind of crazy become the norm. And so you just do them because your parents did and your friends do and everybody else did. And if you can break yourself out of that and kind of go, all right, I'm just going to start from first principles. Like, how much money do I have? How much money do I make? How much do I need to spend, say, in a month to just cover my very basics? And what does that leave me left over after I do all my adulting, right? Meaning I have insurance, I'm saving something for the future, sort of, even if it's not a lot, just some basics like that. And then that's how you find out how much money you actually have to spend. Because if you do what your friends do, perfect. This is the number one example I see all the time is a car, right? Like, you get done with school, or, you're in your early 20s and you get your first real job or whatever, and you go out and buy a car. Everybody here does it. Everybody, it's almost like a rite of passage to go take a car loan. But, taking a loan on a car is like kind of crazy. Right? It's a depreciating asset, meaning that it goes down over time and pretty sharply. And God forbid it's a new car. I mean, don't even get me started on that. But, and you're taking out a loan that you have to pay interest on to pay for the thing that is now worth less every day. I mean, it does not, like, financially, it's just complete crazy talk to do that. And it's a weird thing that we think somebody in their early 20s should have this like really nice car, or even, like I said, a new car. When you're young and you're at an entry level job, or, I worked at the grocery store for a lot of years after high school. There's no way I should have a really nice car, but a lot of the people that I worked with did. And they just, went paycheck to paycheck, month to month, just barely being able to pay for those things. And I drove a total junker because I wanted to spend all my money on traveling and cameras and stuff. But my point is that it can feel totally normal. It can feel totally at ease to just walk in and go plunk down a big fat loan on a car that you can't really afford. And everybody else is doing it, so it's fine. If you can have the fortitude to mind your mana curve and to say, no, I'm going to cut these 6 drops out and I'm not going to do it, you can get yourself way, way, way ahead. It's just really hard to do because it feels like you're falling behind. And there's really strong societal pressures to keep up. When you buy a house, I don't know how much you feel this stuff, Luis, but there's the keep up with the Joneses syndrome where, like, your neighbor gets a nice new fence and you're like, well, maybe I should get a fence. And, they get a rockery and some new flowers and you're like, we got to get a flower bed. And all of a sudden they have the new Tesla parked out front and you're like looking at the old Volkswagen or whatever. And you're like, these are natural human tendencies that pop up. But if you can divorce yourself from them at least enough to just make sound financial decisions and live within your means, you can actually get way ahead.
Yeah, I don't feel that pressure, but I also I think part of it is like one of the things that you learn as you get older is not to care too much about what other people think.
That's true. Yeah, it affects you a lot more when you're young.
I mean, a really good way to do that is anytime you're like reliving like man, they must have all been staring at me, or they can sense that I've got the the spill on my shirt, or I bet they're wondering about this thing. Think about how often you think about other people and then realize no one cares. No one thinks about you.
Nobody cares. You learn that over time, but nobody cares. They don't even pay attention. They're just worried about their own stuff. It's really funny how that works out.
All right. I want to move on to my favorite of these. Mm-hmm. The favorite more on the serious side, which is having a plan. This was like the first topic I talked about when I got on the show. And there's a reason for that. It's because I believe this is what separates the good Magic players from the great Magic players, or even the good Magic players from the mediocre Magic players. Like every step you go up, it's more about this, and that's true in life too. Which is really just and I don't mean just to be clear, you need to have your whole life planned out. In fact, I think that's actually pretty bad. But what I mean is you need to have reasons for the decisions you make. And you can sometimes, change your mind or go in a different direction. And that's all totally fine. But what you should be doing when you're making decisions is have a reason for what you're doing. Like know why you're making this decision and where you're going towards. So when you're working somewhere, what are you trying to accomplish? And then again, I really don't want to say that everything has to have this grand thing, but just try not to make decisions out of inertia. I've done that in my life and it's been terrible. Like try to make decisions because they're the right things to do or because they lead you in the right direction. And you can't know everything. Just like in a game of Magic, you don't know what all your opponents are going to draw or in their hand. You don't know what you're going to draw. But but try to just do a good job of like, hey, I'm thinking about leaving this job for that job. Okay, why? And like just draw up that list of reasons. Just figure out like, okay, this makes sense because of this, or that this doesn't make sense because.
Would you actually write it down? Like when you said drop, do you mean like do the pros and cons list thing, or?
If that's what works for you, yeah, you could do that. I tend to just talk it out, but it's kind of the same thing. Like. Okay. And just make sure that you're making the decision, that actually like you have a reason behind it. On the other hand, you don't want to get locked into your first pick, which is something, that we teach very early in drafting, which is, let's say you decided, all right, this is the career path I want to take. And I want to go to school, because I want to be a paramedic and this is where I want to go. And then you like maybe do a ride along or learn more about it. And you realize, oh, this isn't what I want to do. I don't like this. I don't like the sight of blood. Maybe you didn't know that about yourself or something. You should change plans. You shouldn't feel like, oh, well, I already decided this is what I was going to do, so therefore I'm going to do it. That's not really how it works. In most cases, you can alter your direction. You can change your plan and you can go into a direction that works better for you. So you really have to just do a mix of thinking long-term and short-term so that you are able to end up in a spot where you're putting yourself in the position to have the best outcomes.
How do you manage long-term versus short-term planning, right? There's always a tug of war at play versus, okay, I got $1,000 in my pocket. I want to go buy something cool with it. Got my new camera, spent $1,000. I'm happy today. Versus I should put this all in the bank and then in 20 years it'll be worth more money and I'll be happy with that then. Versus I'll put half in the bank and buy a cheaper camera, right? Like how, when it comes to that type of planning, how do you balance those type of things out?
Well, it can be tricky. And the thing is, at the end of the day, with a lot of this stuff, one of your big goals is just to like get through life, just to survive, to stay as healthy as you can, to make sure your basic needs are met and to make sure you're happy, you're emotionally secure and all these things. So yes, on the one hand, money that you put in an index fund or a retirement account is going to be worth more than it is now. Every dollar you save is like, $6 you have later or much more in some cases. That doesn't mean you can get through life like without spending any money on yourself or without taking care of yourself. Like I am a big believer
broadly too. Like it's like that with relationships and stuff too, right? Like I could, with people and with jobs and with all types of things where, the marshmallow thing, right? We're constantly faced with the decision, or do you want to eat the one marshmallow now or get two later? And that's I think a tough balance to strike, right? Because I don't know, I've talked to you about this before. And, you're not the all in on the long-term guy, right? You're not, you're like, hey, you don't get to bring it with you and you don't know what's coming tomorrow. So you should definitely enjoy today, but you're also not the type of person to just stupidly set yourself up for nothing and go, well, I YOLO'd it all away my whole life. And now I just have nothing when I get a little older or, when my life changes or whatever.
Yeah. It is really a combination of both those things. And part of this is stuff you just gain off experience. Like you kind of get a sense of like, what do I need to be happy? And one of the things I really that always bugs me is when those like financial, like self-help like growth books are like, don't get the latte at Starbucks. You could save this much money a month or whatever. And it's like, on the one hand, like, yeah, that is true, right? Like you will save, you can save a decent amount of money doing that. that's not what's going to keep you from being, financially secure. That's not going to lead you down the path of financial ruin. Like, yes, sometimes people do have things that they really do need to cut out, and they can like look and try to figure out the best way to go ahead and do that. But for the most part, like, I think something that makes you feel better and it makes you much happier for a relatively low price, it can be worth it. You have to kind of figure out for yourself what you need to be happy, and whether that's Marshall and his $25,000 watches. I don't know.
Oh my God. I'll tell you what, I don't need to be happy or expensive watches. I like watches, but you could take all of them away and I'd be fine.
Yeah. Okay. I don't believe that. But anyway, you have to figure out for yourself kind of where that lands. And sometimes that's going to be, whether like it really does make your life a lot better to get that coffee at Starbucks in the morning on the way to work. And if that's great, fit that into your budget. You can't repeat those ad nauseum, but you can make some of those decisions, and then do try to save something for the future. Do try to set yourself up for success in that way, because that also does matter.
Yeah, I think that the obvious answer here is that neither extreme is correct, right? Spending all your money once you get it, or all of your doing the thing that you want to do right in front of you at your long-term detriment. This comes down to eating, relationships. I said all this stuff. That's clearly not correct. And also saving everything you make and not really enjoying what you've earned and stuff in the moment doesn't make any sense either, right? Neither of those two extremes are what you want. You need to eat some vegetables, right? There's another heuristic for you. You got to save some of the money you got. You got to pass on something that sounds really good in the moment, but isn't going to be good for you long term. And so finding that middle ground, I've found that it changes for me. There's times when I'm like, okay, this is going really well. I really should, catch up a bit or just sort of bite the bullet. It's not going to change my life, and just put some money into a retirement account. And there's other times where I'm like, you know what? Something really good happened, and I'm going to reward myself, or I'm going to get a watch or something like that, And so I think that there's a real sense for that too. So it's just always in the middle. It's almost never hardcore one way or the other.
I mean, that's also life.
It's true. That is true. Yeah. Moderation and all that too is important. All right. What about the next one?
So this is what I like a lot too, because this comes up a lot more in real life actually than it does in Magic, which is you've got to play from the position you're in. And what we mean by that is you may have made mistakes. Well, no, you have made mistakes, because everyone does, but it doesn't really help. Just like it doesn't help in Magic to dwell on the fact that, I wish I'd taken a different card third pick there. I would be in a better position now. It's like, yeah, that's great, but you didn't,
Right.
And so what are you going to do? You're going to complain about it, or are you going to play Magic?
Right.
You've got to play from the position you're in. And sometimes that means that you've got to deal with the consequences of your mistakes, or even not even mistakes. Because again, you don't want to be result oriented. A decision you made, you had two comparable, schools that you could have gone to, you weren't sure which college you wanted to go to, and you went to one and it ended up being one that you kind of regret. You think like, it would have been a lot better if I went to the other place. Well, you didn't. So now you've got to decide. And sometimes that means you can transfer schools, right? In this example, like that is a possibility. You can decide that, hey, it's actually worth biting the bullet to try to arrange a transfer. Sometimes it means, look, I'm 2.5 years in. I should finish, studying whatever it is I'm studying here and go into whatever career I want to. Likewise, you took a different job, you went out with a different person. Like these are all decisions that you make in life, and it really doesn't help to dwell on them. Ruminating is what it's called, right? When you just replay it in your head. Just like in Magic, you block the wrong creature on turn 3. On turn 6, you're not sitting there thinking about how you blocked the wrong creature, right? You're playing your board on turn 6, and sometimes you can still win the game. And life isn't usually quite as clear cut as straight up wins or losses. But let's say you did go to the school and you realize, I really wish I'd gone to a different school, or I wish I had chosen a different major. You can still figure out what is my best play from here. And sometimes that's going down the path you're in, and because you've already committed. Sometimes it's switching. There's no really good, hard or fast rule for that. Every situation is different. But
yeah,
what's important is taking what you have in front of you and playing that game. Don't try to replay in your head the game that could have been, because that game's gone. That world is gone. That just doesn't exist.
Right. And, an interesting way to conceptualize these is like, especially let's take the Magic example. I play my first 3 turns. I screw up something early. I put myself in a situation that is worse than it could have been, but I'm still playing a game. Take me out of the equation. There's cards on the table, cards in hand, whatever. Let's just say I'm playing on Arena, right? I leave. I leave the room. Luis walks in. He sits down at the thing and he's told, win this game of Magic. Hall of Famer, top 5er, do whatever you can to win this game of Magic. Luis is not going to sit there and go, God, it really sucks I didn't block on turn 2. He's just like, okay, here's the puzzle. Here's my resources. Here's theirs. Here's what I know. And here's the plan of action that I'm going to put into it. Luis is one of the best Magic players. Imagine anybody that you think is really good at life, somebody who you think just has their stuff together. They're really capable, smart, reasonable, right? They're just somebody who would sit down and just do a good job. And you went to the wrong major. You dated the wrong person. You spent all your money on a Lamborghini or whatever. And now you snapshot your life and you put that person in that spot. What do? Right. And they're going to take the reins and they're not going to feel bad that they have this Lamborghini that they can't really afford and they need to break up with their significant other and that they've got a degree that they don't really like. They're going to go, okay, here's what I need to do. I can parlay this degree into a double major and make it so that it's something I can go into the field I want. I'm going to sell this car for a loss and pay it off and bite the bullet. There's no other way out. This is the cleanest way. So that sucks, but I'm going to have to do it. And I'm going to have a tough conversation with my significant other. And these are the things that I'm going to do to right this ship because they don't have the baggage. They don't have the sunk cost, right? Of feeling like, well, I've already put all this effort into this. I can't let it go now. And that's every point in your life is a snapshot like that. Every point in a Magic game is a snapshot like that, where somebody who you feel is better at you, could sit down and say, here's what needs to happen. Right. And yes, it's going to suck for a while, or yes, this is going to be painful, or yes, you're not going to really like this, but here's what needs to happen for me to get from the point that I'm at now to the point that I want to get, completely regardless of what has happened prior to this moment. Right. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do for yourself. It's really tough. But if you can visualize it like that, you'll see, no, somebody else would sit down that didn't have this baggage and they would see at least a way out, a way forward. And they would start taking steps to do that because they don't have the emotional component to it. And, if you can get yourself to that point, then you may be able to take those steps too.
Another thing that this is going to teach you, and I still maintain the number one best lesson Magic teaches you, maybe alongside not being result oriented, though they're very similar. It's just you learn how to take L's, you learn how to take losses.
Oh yeah,
I just think like there's very few people who are very good at like a game like Magic, whether that's Magic or chess or poker or whatever, who are going to get really tilted when something outside of their control happens to them, because that's just your life. You just realize that, sometimes they flip the wrong card on the river. Sometimes your opponent top decks, whatever. And when you get a flat tire, like it sucks. I don't like it, but I don't go off fly off the handle because I don't know. I've been mana screwed before. That's just IRL mana screw.
you got mana screwed in the finals of freaking PT, man. It's whatever.
Happens. And I think that's a really valuable lesson that you can take from all this. It's not a heuristic as much as if you play a lot of Magic, you're going to lose a lot, and you're either going to learn how to take losses, or I assume you're going to find something else to do, because if you don't, it doesn't sound very fun.
Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson along these lines is to learn how to take the self-inflicted loss. Right? Like the longer you're around, the more mistakes you'll make, the more stuff will screw up. The more things that you look back and go, I can't believe I did that, or I shouldn't have done that, or, whatever. And if you can get to the point of recognizing it, internalizing it, understanding what you did and why you didn't like it, and then forgiving yourself and moving forward, that's a really good place to be. I think that this is the type of thing that comes with age, right? Where, I remember, the first pretty long chunk of my life was pretty good. I just didn't really view life as like a tough thing. Like, it wasn't like I was living some great life or whatever. I didn't make hardly any money, whatever, but I didn't really care. I just thought life was fine. But then I lost my dad, 7 years ago or whatever. And it was this is tough. This is the outlook that I had on life is different now, because one of the fundamental pillars of my life is gone. And I'm like, there's going to be more of this. you know, that I'm going to lose my mom. I'm going to lose family. You know, like this is actually hard. Like life isn't just, you know, upside. You have to be kind of mentally prepared to battle and that type of stuff for, you know, I am going to have the mentality of things that are very tough on me are going to be happening, and I'm going to be strong and push through and move on and keep living life and not, you know, get down on it and stuff like that to the best of my ability. But it's the ones that you do to yourself, right? Where you make some big life mistake or just something stupid and you're just like, God, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. If you can really put the time into to be able to forgive yourself, it helps a lot. You can pick up and move on because you just don't get that much time, you know? So seen a lot of people kind of fall off for a while after they do something really stupid and, mess up their life or whatever. And it's like most, you know, if you can put the time in, you can come back from it, but it can be difficult. So
the thing is, like, everyone, it seems trite to say it, but everyone really does make mistakes. And usually people make a lot of big mistakes over the course of their life. If you like, generally a life well lived involves a lot of mistakes, because if you're not making any mistakes, that generally means you're not really pushing yourself.
And anything, yeah.
And that's fine for some people. Again, I'm really not here to tell you what your goals should be in life or how you should live, like how one size fits all or whatever. But I think most people probably err on the side of not trying out and pushing themselves as opposed to more. So,
yeah. So that's, you know, obviously deep personal stuff to work on as you make your way through life. But I've found that if I had known this before, I think it would have helped me kind of get back on track a little sooner after some, you know, stupid stuff that I've done in my life. On
a less serious note.
Yeah, no, this is a really important one here, Luis.
This was good. Use all your mana every turn. So
feels like it goes slightly against some of the stuff we just said, but
well, what this one would dictate is you know, you got to go for the best available play, the most expensive play. So I have a good example to kick things off.
Wait, so you like spend all my money every day? Like if you have money in the bank, you're making a mistake? Is that?
It doesn't exactly mean that, but it does mean there are places where you should actually spend as more money as opposed to less, right? And one of those places, Ben, it's a good way to, if you don't know what's better between different options, sometimes it's actually better to go on the more expensive side. And I remember going to a pharmacy with Ben S once, and he was buying sleeping pills, and the pharmacist asked him, which one do you want? And he's like, just your most expensive, whatever that is. And they're like, what? And Ben's like, look, I don't know anything about sleeping pills, but I want ones that work. And I figure the most expensive ones have a greater chance of working. Note, you should not do this when you're at a nice restaurant and they ask you what wine you want and you just say your most expensive wine. Because A, it's going to be in some places, you know, $5,000 or $10,000.
Yep.
And then B, if you don't know enough about wine, trust me, you're not really going to get that. That's deep diminishing returns. You're way better off spending $10 on a bottle of wine than $100 if you're most people, including myself for sure. But when it comes to, you know, the classic example everyone always gives is boots, right? If you buy too cheap of boots, you're going to buy 5 pairs of $40 boots instead of 1 pair of $150 boots. And
yes.
If you skimp on the wrong stuff, you know, and again, this is why income inequality and why, you know, people who lack resources actually get double punished, because you end up with crappier stuff and you have to keep paying more for it. It's actually expensive to be poor. But, you know, if you can afford it, like getting a higher quality thing can really be worth it. There's places where spending your mana every turn is actually, you know, spending as much mana as you can is actually really good. And the classic example is, you know, try not to skimp on your bed, your shoes, your chair, anywhere you spend a lot of your life, which is on your feet, lying in your bed or sitting in your chair. If you spend you know, a good amount of money, again, I'm not saying go buy a $10,000 mattress, but maybe don't try to buy a $100 mattress, you know, and maybe buy a $500 mattress if you can.
Yeah. And if you can, right. And that is the thing, is that it is interesting how those purchases line up. Like, just like Louis said, you know, if you go and you can't shell out the money for like a nice computer, let's say, right? So let's say, you know, $3,000 computer, some like, you know, maxed out thing or whatever. And you're like, well, I don't have $3,000, but I do have $400 for this crappy computer. Okay. So you buy it and then you use it and then it dies after a year. And then you have to do that again and again and again. That starts to add up pretty quickly, where the good one tends to last. But then you also get dinged on the other side, where when you're done with your $3,000 computer and it's been 5-6 years or whatever, you can usually sell that for $1,200, $1,000, you know, because those things still work and they're still a product that somebody wants. Where if you try to sell your $400 laptop that you bought 5 years ago that doesn't work anymore, they're going to tell you to just throw it away, or you have to pay somebody to recycle the thing or whatever. Right. And so there's that kind of loop where if you can get yourself to get something that's quality that you use all the time, then you should. The interesting thing, but I mean, yeah, that is going to be constrained by your income, of course. So it's just a thing that you can think about if you have that flexibility, or if you can get yourself to think, okay, in 6 months, I'm going to buy the thing if I save up for it. That's what I used to do, like with cameras and stuff like that. When I was doing that, because again, I worked at the grocery store, so I didn't make anything, but I was like, I wanted to get stuff to start to do photography more seriously. And, you know, it was way out of my price range, but I just said, okay, well, I'm going to set a long-term goal of getting this one camera. And it took me a really long time to save up how much I needed to. And like, you know, I kept the same crappy car the whole time. You know, I made the sacrifices that I needed to make or whatever. And crazy enough, I actually still have it. I think I'll just be buried with it or something. Like you know, that was like the most outlandish purchase I've ever made relative to how much money I made. But also like that camera, like kind of unlocked my creative space. You know what I mean? Like I really got into photography, and then, you know, I've been able to carry over that love of photography into videography and stuff like that. So, you know, it was an interesting life lesson, because I remember my stepdad at the time, I was in my 20s, and, you know, he said, "You spent how much on that camera?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know it's a lot or whatever, but like, I want to start trying to do this photography stuff." And he's just like, you know, should have put it in the bank, you know, and kind of shook his head at me. But, you know, even though I think in most cases he actually was probably right, like I should have just bought a cheaper camera or something like that. Getting that at the time, it changed my life. I mean, it just did. Like you know, I started a business off of that at some point. It wasn't, you know, really successful or whatever, but it taught me a lot about how to do that stuff. And then, you know, I ended up getting a computer a few years later, and I got the first time I had Photoshop, you know, and then I learned how to do that. And it was like, these are all skills that I use like every day now for my work, right? For doing LR and for doing the watch channel and stuff like that. I use that stuff all the time. I need to know how to use cameras. I need to know how to use editing software. And I've used that stuff, you know, for 20 years now or whatever. So you never quite know what door will open up from that. But that was an instance where I did use my mana. I tapped out real hard. And it did end up actually paying off for me in some way. What are some
so
of the
what
other,
you're saying is you needed definitely expensive gear before you really got started in your creative endeavors.
No, I mean, I was doing it before with these cameras that I got handed down to me. You know, they were like from the 60s or 70s or whatever. My dad had one, and he's like, "Here, you can use this." And I was using those, but I mean, they were like ancient, you know, like all mechanical, everything. And that was a good place to learn from, but I did need to kind of step it up. Now I could have got a cheaper one and probably still had similar. So, you know, take from that what you will. Are there any of these things, by the way, the stuff you mentioned, that you personally, you know, put your money into, like your chair, your bed? Like, do you do that stuff, or what are the ones you find important?
I bought a Aeron, the Herman Miller chair, a refurbished one, so it was cheaper, but it was still, I don't know, $600 or something like that. And
yeah, I got one too. Mine was $900. I mean, it was $900 freaking chair. You know?
But it's great. It's comfortable to sit in, you know, and we spend too much time in our chairs, I believe, as is. So it certainly helps. I put value on stuff. The best things, like there's this feeling, I don't know, you know, if I'm sure German has a word to describe this. You can probably tell me.
Some 30-letter monstrosity
of something that you have, like an item that you use a lot and you've gotten a huge multiple of value from. Like a funny example is like Gabby got me a pair of sunglasses, not expensive ones or anything, but just nice sunglasses that do the job. And I use them like every day, and they've made my life a lot better. I used to never have them.
Yeah.
And it's just like something small like that like really enhances your quality of life. And, you know, that I just look for spots where I can find something that will make your life better.
Okay. Yeah. Those high upside plays are definitely really good. I'm a big chair desk person as well. Those are, I mean, the crazy thing is, again, you know, many times you do get what you pay for as well. Like one thing with this chair, I don't know if you've had this, Luis, with yours yet, but you know, mine had some stuff that was getting kind of loose and not working right. And I, sent an email to the company down here that I got it from. And they're like, cause these things have an 11-year warranty on them. And I was like, these things are, and they're like, okay, we'll send out a guy. And like a few weeks later, some guy showed up at my door with a cart full of parts and he just replaced all of it. You know, so like now I have basically a new chair. It was all free, like no payment for any of that, you know? And like, if I would have bought, you know, 4 or 5, Staples chairs in this time frame, I wouldn't have quite been up to what I've paid for this now, but it would have been coming close to it. And it wouldn't have been as good of a chair that whole time, you know? So again, if you can get over the hump, that's the hard part though. It's just like most times in my life, I wouldn't have had $900 for a chair. You know, I just decided to save up and buy it. Okay. Any others that we want to cover here, Luis?
I mean, I think we got a throwaway of avoiding bread and going keto only.
A throwaway? Producer Jeff put that in. That was his contribution to the episode.
Oh, sorry. I thought you put it in. Extremely valuable point. But,
oh my God, whatever. One that we kind of already covered, but is best case scenario mentality. You know, don't assume everything's always going to work out the best for you. It's reasonable to be optimistic about your long term. You know, you should try to think in those terms, but don't have your head in the clouds, right? Life can actually be tough. And it's really common for people to go through tough stretches in their life where they kind of feel beaten down, where, you know, multiple things kind of pile up at once and it can feel tough to get through. And if you're just walking through life thinking like everything's going to be great all the time, like that can be even harder because you kind of were completely unexpecting it. I think being in the middle, you know, is kind of where you want to be. You don't want to have that best case. You certainly don't want to have the worst case though. Being too pessimistic about stuff actually, you know, they do studies and stuff and it makes you unhappy. It kind of leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes, and that's not good either. So keep that stuff in mind as well. All right, let's call it a show there, Luis. I hope this was useful. It's obviously not our normal topic to give life advice, but Luis and I talk about this stuff quite a bit in our personal conversations and stuff about just kind of how to approach life and how to do these things. And hopefully some of these were useful for you, not just in Magic, but also in real life. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the show at lrcast.com. And I want to thank our sponsors once again, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for all your Magic needs. They have also got Pokemon and Flesh and Blood as well if you're into other games, so you can kind of pick up all your gaming needs over there. If you pick up anything, use the affiliate code LR at checkout. Thanks for doing so. And also, of course, FTX. Thanks again, FTX, for throwing that great charity event. Luis and I were playing for Planned Parenthood, and I was playing for Seattle Children's Hospital, and we got to donate a lot of money thanks to that, to those great charitable organizations. And that was a really special thing, and we just wanted to say thanks again for them. If you do want to check them out, again, it's ftx.us here in the United States, and ftx.com anywhere outside. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Marshall, I'd like to announce that I'm going to expand my dominance into other games soon.
Oh.
I'm actually going to be playing in a chess tournament in about a week.
Oh my God, you said yes?
I said yes.
You are crazy.
Oh no, it's so good. So I got approached by chess.com there, and they run chess pog champs. And so basically
this sounds really prestigious.
Well, so it's a Twitch tournament where they get streamers to play chess, and they've run these before. And I'm going to be in the lowest rated category. So because I'm someone who has played quite a bit of chess, but not for a really long time. I was in the chess club in high school, and that's kind of where it ended. Mm-hmm. Magic supplanted chess for me, but I don't know. I'm good. I've got some studying to do this weekend. I'm gonna read some books, and then I'm gonna set up I'm probably gonna stream a coaching session where I'm getting coached by someone who's good at chess. So I'm excited. I haven't played chess. I played literally one game. I played a game of chess against my dad over the winter break because he brought a chess set, and he demolished me. Of course, he's never let me win. So. He actually beat me and both my brothers at chess over because my dad and my grandfather was huge into chess. Like they both just really liked it. So
okay.
So I remember growing up playing chess. I would play against both of them growing up, and they didn't let me win then either. But I'm excited about this. It's going to be fun. I don't really have any expectations, but
can we watch this?
It's going to be on Twitch. Yes.
Oh my God. I get to, oh, this is going to be fun. You know, the like top chess players memorize the like first 15 to 20 moves of their chosen openings now.
Yeah.
Like, and you have to know your opponent's ones too. And the good players will have a few different options for openings.
You realize I'm not going to be playing against a chess master. That's not
I
what's
know
happening.
that. I know. I'm just saying.
Because I certainly wouldn't do well then. But as long as I don't embarrass myself, you know, I'm going to be happy with it. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to getting a little bit of chess action in.
I feel similarly. As long as you embarrass yourself, I'm going to be happy too.